Hey there, and welcome to this video about transactions. So why should we use transactions in the first place? Well, I decided to make this small example to illustrate why we should use them and hopefully when we can use them. And I have a small database, really simple, that will simulate a bank. We have a bank database with an account table, and we have two different accounts. We have 1 and 2. We have 1,000 in whatever currency on the first account, then we have no money on the second. So if we're gonna withdraw 1,000 money and put it onto the second account, we need to be really sure that we will be able to both withdraw and also deposit it, because if we get an exception right after we have withdrawn the money, maybe we will not be able to actually deposit it onto the second account, and then we will have an inconsistent database. So that's a problem. If we head over to the application, it's just a basic Java console application. And if I just go through the code, we are making connections, and we're making prepared statements for each of the statements here: withdraw money and deposit money. And I've made some SQL statement variables here. And then we start the try clause here, and we get a connection. And for that, I've made a small database connection class here that's basically going to take all the credentials for the database and return a connection. So if we head back to the main program here, we start by setting up the first prepared statement, and we are preparing the statement with the SQL, and then we're specifying the parameters for it, and we're setting the amount of money to 1,000, and we're going to take it from account number 1, and then we're executing the prepared statement. So the next one is the deposit. Then we're going to do a little bit the same, but we're going to add 1,000 to our account number 2, and also going to execute that. Okay, so this is all good. Let's see what happens if we run this program here. So build successful. If we head over to the database and refresh this, we can see we moved the money to account number 2. Well, that's good. But we also didn't have any exceptions. Let me just check it one here. Yep. So let's imagine that between these two SQL statements here, that we get an exception. If something happens during these two prepared statements, and we are only able to execute the first one, then we will have an inconsistent database because we will not be able to do this second statement. So one way of simulating an exception is by doing this. And if we take a look at what happens now, then we're going to get this arithmetic exception divided by 0, and we have successfully executed this first prepared statement. But then we have the exception. We go to the catch clause, and we don't execute the second one here. So what does the database look like? So if we take a look here, we can see now that we withdrew the money from the first account, but we didn't actually deposit it. So that's a problem. We essentially have 1,000 money floating in cyberspace right now. So that is a little bit sad here. How can we handle that? If we revert the database, so we set it to 1,000 again here, we can do this with a transaction. And the first thing we need to do is that we should tell the database that it should not auto-commit, because by default, the database is set up to actually commit each and every statement when they're executed. So there's going to be a commit after this one and a commit after this one. But we need to change this when we are using transactions, because we need to ensure that all of them have been executed before we commit it. So first we set the connection to auto-commit false, because then we are in control of when we do the commits. And the next thing is that when we get to the end of these SQL statements, then we're going to commit it. So we say connection commit. And then we can also print out a message so that we can actually see that we have committed the transaction. All right, and then we need to deal with when we get the exception, because when this happens, we're going to jump to the catch clause. And then we need to instruct the database that we got an error here, so you need to roll back the first statement. And we can do this by calling connection rollback and print out a message so that we can actually see that we're rolling back the changes. And finally, when we are done here, we should set the database back to its default state with the autocommit. All right, so let's see what happens if we run the program now. So we can see we still have the exception, and the database is telling us that it has rolled back the changes. So we got to the catch clause, and let's have a look in the database if we still have the consistency. So we can see that we have 1000 still in place. We had an error, but we still have a consistent database. So that's good. And if we remove the exception, so we don't get any errors, let's see what happens then. So then we can see the transaction committed successfully. That means we've reached the end of the try block, and we didn't go to the catch. And if we take a look again at the database, we have successfully withdrawn money and deposited onto the second account. All right, I think this is all I wanted to illustrate here. I hope you can make this work. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.